Heads up, this is going to be edited and thrown onto YouTube. Hi, YouTube. And we are going to get pretty heavy into the nitty-gritty. So if you're completely like, I don't want to learn anything about the game, I'm not interested in knowing numbers or any of that, one, that's totally cool. But two, why are you watching my channel specifically? I'm sure there's some channel out there, I don't know, some big channel streaming to 10K people playing Monster Rancher that, you know, doesn't really give a shit about any of that. You might have more fun over there. First off, this guy's pretty hype. First off, we are going to be talking about combination. In Monster Rancher 2, combination is like the thing everyone points to when they're like, oh man, this game's complicated. This is a complicated game. But after you've done it enough times, it's really not that complicated. There are a lot of steps, but it can be kind of broken down into like subsections of things to worry about. And then all of a sudden, the like 10 or 20 things that are like necessary to have a good combination only comes down to about 3. Like there's 3 or 4 things that you need to worry about. In Monster Rancher 2, what you need to worry about is order of stats. You need to worry about order of stat gains. You need to worry about order of base stats, and you need to worry about all of that stuff on the resulting baby monster. So in Monster Rancher 2, you can have 2 parents that both have really high power, both have really high speed, and both have really low intelligence, and they're completely incompatible. And even if they are compatible, maybe they're incompatible with the baby. This game takes a lot of that and kind of the nebulous shit out of it. I say nebulous, like it's not completely solved and we don't know exactly how it works. But from like a casual perspective, this game is much easier to grasp on a casual level, for better and for worse. So let's go to the city. I have 2 files saved. So first things first, in this game you cannot re-roll on the same week for combination. It kind of works like Monster Rancher 1. The Monster Rancher 1 has specific results seeded on specific weeks, whereas this is kind of like everything you've done up until this point has affected the RNG, and then at the beginning of whatever week you're on, the RNG is now set for that specific week, and then whatever you do in that week probably changes the RNG for the next week, but once you've started a new week, the RNG is set again. Don't really know exactly how that works. We haven't done that much in-depth shit. That might take years to figure out. It's still not entirely understood Monster Rancher 2. Oh, I'm talking quick. I gotta take a breath. Jesus. Let me relax. I'm excited. I get to talk about stuff, and everyone's always like, man, you gotta make a combination video, and I never fucking have. I'm gonna make a UKMR combination video before I make a Monster Rancher 2 one, so. This is July 1st week. If I go to the lab and I do the same things, I will get the same monster every time. No matter whether it says the monster has a 1% chance or a 50% chance on this specific file in this specific order, my monster will always be the same on this week if I do nothing else to influence it. So let's go to the research center. What I am going to aim for is I am going to aim for this guy. I already have a Baltan alien Metron. I've raised him. His stats are real goofy. But I want my end result to be Baltan Alien Metron because I think that's a really strong competitive monster, and I'll explain that as we get into it. I basically got 2 monsters that have any sort of like solid raising done. You guys all know Cooler Lobster. And then we got my boy Fast, who is actually not that fast. His stats look really stupid. There's a reason they are the way they are. We'll combine Colt and Burpo, and we'll combine Fast. Like I said, we don't really know exactly how the RNG is seeded specifically. We just know that at the beginning of the week, it is set. Regardless of the fact it says I have 29% chance to get Baltan Alien Metron and 19% chance to get a regular Alien Metron, 17% chance to get the Shooting Star Suezo. Whatever I roll in the next 2 seconds, whatever I roll here, regular Suezo, if I reset and do it again, doesn't matter if I do it a billion times in a row, it's always going to give me the Suezo. And what do its stats look like? They were negligibly stronger than the baseline stats of the monsters we used. So if I do this exact same thing again, I'm going to get purebred Suezo again. Bada boom, bada bing. What a waste of 10,000 power. Not good. Not good. So, like, how do we make a strong monster in a combination? What do you need to look out for? What are all the little bits? Do Fast first. We'll do Colt and Burpo second. So now you can see Suezo has a much lower chance of being spawned than it did before. Now, what might not be immediately apparent, or, you know, maybe it is immediately apparent after this specifically, it's a thing that's existed in every Monster Rancher game that's had combination, is there's a thing that is known in the community as blood strength. And what blood strength is the monster's percent chance to be born in combination. Some monsters have a much higher percent chance, some monsters have a much lower percent chance. In Monster Rancher 2, Pixie and Golem have the highest blood strength, and that basically means that whether you put Pixie first or you put Pixie second, there's going to be an incredibly good chance that Pixie will like be one of the higher percentage monsters. If you were to combine, say you're trying to get a Love Seeker, which is Metalner and Pixie. Metalner has an extremely weak blood strength, and Pixie has an extremely strong blood strength. Even if you put Metalner first and Pixie second, because you know you wanted a purebred Metalner, subbreed Pixie, you would probably have a much better chance to get a Futurity, which is the opposite way of Pixie main breed and Metalner subbreed, than you would having a Love Seeker. Certain breeds are going to have a higher chance for the results here. Chips can give you innate little bonuses. Some, like the Mochi one, I think starts you with extra fame, just like it does in Monster Rancher 2. Some give you changes to your preferred drill they do. So there's a lot of like interesting little things with that. But the main thing you give a monster chips for is to change their percentage and to allow easier re-rolling. In Monster Rancher 2, chips are how you get stuff like grit and other battle specials, and it's also how you get stuff like the +1s on drills. In this game, it seems a little bit less consequential and more important because of how hard it is to re-roll monsters. So we're not going to do it again, but if I were to do this, if I were to use the Suezo chip, now I'm at 10 and 10 instead of whatever it was, at 10 and 7. So from 10 and 7 to 10 and 10. So the Alien Metron and the Baltan breeds have slightly less chance, and the Suezo has slightly more. This changes the RNG, so you can use a chip as long as it affects the actual outcome, and it will change the RNG. I don't think like the Mochi chip here would actually change it at all. If you're stuck, you can always use a Mystic chip. What a Mystic chip does is it automatically guarantees if one of the monsters has a special subbreed, that the special subbreed will be the one that it comes out as, right? For example, Cooler Lobster and this guy. So there's a couple of monsters I can make, right? But if I were to use the Mystic chip, all of a sudden I have access to the Dadaraki, I have access to the 2 Suezos, and I have access to Golem King Joe. So you can use the Mystic chip that way to get special breeds, even if neither of the monsters actually have a special breed. And again, this also changes the RNG. So let's get down to it. Let's combine for the monster we actually want to make. So the monster we want to make is Baltan Alien Metron. I guess it's Alien Baltan Alien Metron. These names are weird. Too many aliens, man. If I want to make Alien Metron as my competitive monster, I would go Alien Metron, and I would go Cooler Lobster. And look at that. I got 19% chance to get the monster I want. Second highest chance. Looks fantastic. Except it is not. The higher the chance of the predicted result, the lower the stats they actually inherit from the parents. So this, what I believe is King Joe Baltan, would actually have the highest stats carried over because it has the lowest chance. In Monster Rancher 2, it is incredible. The difference between like a 20% and a 3%. The difference between, you might as well have not even raised this, and oh my god, my guy's got like 800 in every stat to begin with. It's kind of insane. You can kind of get to that in this game as well. You can have monsters that start off with like 9k in almost every stat. We're not going to do that here, and I'm going to explain why in a little bit. So right off the hop, I explained that in Monster Rancher 2, there is a couple of things you need to consider when you're combining. Cooler Lobster has got 4 stats maxed out. They happen to not actually be stats that my boy Alien Metron is good at. Alien Metron has really crappy defense, has really crappy power, really crappy life. His skill is fine. His skill is okay. So Metron is more of a intelligence, skill, speed type monster. Cooler Lobster is more of exactly what you see here. If I combine them, knowing that, you know, you want this guy to be the lower chance, it's now 10%. You know, it's not great, but it's better than it was. Not bad. I bet the result will be pretty good. Why will the result be pretty good? These two monsters seem completely incompatible. You need to get your stats in a specific order. And what I mean by that is you look at what your monster's stat gain is, and then you look at your monster's final stat, and you apply a multiplier to the final stat based on how good your monster is at raising that stat. So, for example, Cooler Lobster has an A gain in defense. That is a maximum defense gain. He ends up getting a 5 divided by 3 multiplier to his 9995 defense. Kind of big, kind of a big multiplier. His life and his power are B And so that is a 4 divided by 3 multiplier applied to his life and his power. So those end up well above 10k as well. His skill is extremely low. I think it's a 2. So he gets a 2 divided by 5 multiplier. So his skill, as far as combination is concerned, is actually significantly lower than 10k. And so that affects the order of these stats. So looking at this, you would think that his skill, for all intents and purposes, is actually higher than his defense. But because of these multipliers based on stat gains, it's actually significantly worse. That is also why Fast's stats are so fucked up. He has such good multipliers on his intelligence and his skill that if they were even like 10 points higher, the 5 divided by 3 multiplier on his skill would make it higher than his power one would be, which I believe his power is a 2. So a 2 divided by 5 multiplier. Basically, his power ends up being roughly 3,333, and his skill is just under 3,333 as well. His power ends up getting divided by 3, more or less. And his life is the same way. His life gain is a little bit better than his power gain, and if I had gone any higher on life, his life would eclipse it. So if we take a look here, this guy's stat order, including all the multipliers: defense, power, life, skill, speed, intelligence. And this guy's stats are speed, power, life, skill, intelligence, defense. So what does that mean? It means that they have 3 stats lined up. This guy's defense is really high as his first stat. This guy's speed is really high as his first stat. But then after that, you get power, life, skill. Over here, you get power, life, skill. The 2 lower stats at the bottom, they don't really matter that much. So if I had more stats lined up, say this guy's highest stat was also speed, it would fuck the whole thing up. But if all 6 stats are in order, and you end up rolling a monster that has a really, really low % chance on the pedestal, your monster will end up with like 9k and everything. That's the TLDR. If you use these combination multipliers and every single one of your 6 stats is lined up in a perfect order, you will end up with incredible, incredible baby stats. The less stats you have lined up, the lower it pushes the final combination, and it gets worse and worse the fewer stats you have lined up. So even if you have like 10k power on 2 monsters, but it's the only stat that's lined up for both of them, you'll end up maybe only getting like an additional 2k or maybe 1.5k, even if it's a really low % chance. The game looks at how many stats are lined up in order, and the more stats that are lined up, the better it is. So if I were to combine these 2 guys, and I got the 10% chance to get the Alien Metron, I'd have about 4k to 5k starting off in life, power, and skill. Not too bad. Do these crazy baby stats affect lifespan at all? They do not. So that was a lot of math, and I'm going to show you guys real quick that it's not actually that difficult. If you go to legendcup.com, Ultra Kaiju Monster Rancher, they got a fusion calculator. It's pretty cool. Let's put in our 2 monsters. So you can see here, power, life, and skill are lined up. Here, intelligence, defense, and speed are all kind of fucking out of whack. Power and life are the 2 stats that are hardest to raise on the Alien Metron. I guess defense is hard to raise too, but we're not worrying about that for a competitive build. See the D and the E. Even with the 10,000 power, it is only marginally higher than life and intelligence and skill. Like this took some doing. It took some doing to make sure that this was low enough. Maybe that makes more sense now. So is this the best route if you want to do something weird like intelligence Ricubus? It absolutely is, because if you were to line everything up and then say you had Ricubus with like decent intelligence, it does tend to matter a lot more what the first parent stats are, more so than the second. So if you want a Ricubus as your end result, you would really want it to be the second monster anyway. So as long as its stats line up with your 10k intelligence Metron or whatever you have a pretty good shot there. So we're gonna use all that stuff that we just talked about. Everyone's always like, oh, make a video on combination, make a video on combination, and then I do, and they're like, this sucks, this is boring, I don't want to do math. Okay, so we're aiming for Baltan Alien Metron, which is what we already have on fast, but we're gonna lower the chance as much as we can. So this drops it to 9%, which is still like fairly high, but will get us okay stats. The 15s would be a little bit worse, and I got a couple of monsters with the 3% roll, and it's only marginally better, because what this game does, a little bit different than Monster Rancher 2. Monster Rancher 2 is it combines the stats and gives you, voila, here's your new stats. In this game, it gives you, voila, here's your new stats, but it adds it to the base stats of that monster already. So the exact same monster, this 3% Golem King Joe and this 3% Twilight Metron are going to have vastly different power, because the Twilight Metron starts with like 900 power or something like that, and the Golem King Joe starts with 2100 or 2200 or something like that. So even though they're 3% chance, the Golem King Joe ends up with like 6000 plus power and like I think 3000 skill, whereas the Twilight Alien Metron ends up with about 4500 power, 5000 power, and 5000 skill. So it's always going to be a boost on whatever your basic stats already are. That's why if you want to combine for like Thunder Killer or whatever, they can start off with really, really high power stats, specifically because they start off with like 2500 or something like that. This Mystic Chip I'm only using because it lowers the percent by 1, which is just a very small, almost negligible, but not exactly negligible boost. Other than that, the reason I'm using it is because I know it guarantees the result. See, these stats are not bad, right? If I had got the 3% rule, I would probably be over 5,000 in those 3 stats, but also, I would unfortunately have a much worse Metron. First try, crazy, I know. I had to spend 3 of your 12 IQ points to vaguely understand this. I don't think it's that complicated, especially compared to Monster Rancher 2. You know what, I say that, but, you know, I'm not going to name names here, but I have seen people talking in my Discord, especially since this game has come out, and I don't really know how to say this without sounding conceited, but I definitely did take for granted how much I've internalized about this game, because I see people who are like extremely strong players and they're just like, yeah, I don't understand how this like very basic thing works. And I'm like, really? And then it turns out, you know, it's not actually basic. It's just that I got no life and these other people are like functioning adults, and it's like, it's okay to not know everything. Call me a basic bitch, it's cool. I don't actually even remember who I'm talking about, to be honest. But it wasn't a combination thing, it's just they had like mentioned something, they're like, oh, I didn't know it worked this way, and I'm like, damn, really? You're this good at the game, you didn't know that. There's just so much stuff to know about the game, it's completely understandable.